Welcome, everybody, to our Saturday simulcast. There we go. Welcome, everybody, to our Saturday simulcast, brought to you by, as you can see by looking at your lovely screen on the device, the Union Club Hotel at the corner of Grant Street and Mitch Daniels Boulevard, formerly State Street. Thanks again for their support. The places you can hang out there, the Boiler Up Bar, if you like to imbibe a little bit on a gimlet, go to Leap's Coffee and get an artesian pastry like Mike Harmon, who likes a good scone or a good, I'm sure probably a brand or a blueberry muffin. And then if you're a real high roller, you can always skate in the 811 Bistro. Outstanding. Maybe out of Mike and I's league, but I'm sure not many of you are like us and can get don't have to ask for the prices on the surf and turf. market price. Anyway, I've gone off the rails here already, but Mike, thanks again. Yeah, so an interesting report last night by Pete Thamel of ESPN, who's about as well connected as anybody in the coaching and just college sports community, honestly. The gist of it, Mike, being that, Ryan Walters is going to be given more time. And if you can indulge me just for a little bit, Mike, I can read the Purdue portion of his report. It was a report that was just a coaching carousel report. This is just one part of a coaching carousel report. We've already seen some schools fire their coaches, East Carolina and Southern Miss, for those of you really deep in the weeds. And it reads like this real quick. Ryan Walters is in only his second season there, being at Purdue. He's expected to get more time. I repeat, he's expected to get more time. The administration there realizes it's been behind the Big Ten median in NIL and is expected to be supportive of helping Walters through the struggles of his early tenure. Goes on to say Purdue's 1-6 this year, and Walters is 5-14 over 2 years. He fired his offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, on September 29th after the Nebraska game, and the replacement at that spot will be hugely important moving forward. Can Purdue lure a strong candidate and guarantee enough money to convince someone to turn or to help turn the battleship? Purdue's number 116 in scoring offense. The Boilermakers have 3 top 15 teams left on the schedule. Of course, Ohio State, Penn State, IU. And this is where it kind of wraps up. There's administrative empathy for what Walters faces. In fairness, the roster's top 2 players, wideout Deion Burks, DN Nick Scorton, both took big money deals elsewhere in the offseason. It could end up being top 50 NFL draft picks. It ends by saying this: the cost to fire Walters is significant, at nearly $9.3 million after the season, which is another reason he's expected to get more time. So there you go. And I spoke to someone who I know is in the know and can confirm this. Yes, the administration wants to see Walters succeed. Why wouldn't it, right?
Right.
They're higher, and they've already invested a lot of resources into him. And we've talked off camera a lot, Mike, and with some of our colleagues about, how patient Purdue typically is with coaches, and doesn't like to pay people not to work. And so, yeah, this in some ways, I know both of us figured there was always that possibility he could be back, despite what we've seen on the field at times. I know the fan base doesn't like hearing that, but it is what it is, Mike. Money's a factor as well. But know this, too. I was told that he can still lose his job. He's only expected to be given more time. I was told, hey, man, this could still all go south and continue to go south. And if it does, I think they expect to have a new era in here next year. So sort of a bombshell, I think, revelation. Here's somebody go on record of Pete Thamel's status and state this. I think it was revealing, Mike, and it's caused a little bit of a murmur, or maybe even more than a murmur among the fan base. I guess your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think as we move forward and look for, no one's, really surprised that, the administration would want to give him more time. They hired him. You're always slow to hire or fire the people that you hired. So it's not a surprise. But I think the big thing moving forward, and you brought it up at the end, and it was part of your story on GoldandBlack.com that there's no guarantee. I mean, they have 5 games left. We know the schedule: Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, Indiana. We pretty much know how Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana are going to go as of today. Michigan State would be the next tier of teams that probably will not go well for Purdue. Then that leaves kind of Saturday's game against Northwestern. To me, the question is, if we continue to see the same things in these next 5 games that we saw in the first 7, I mean, there's your decision right there. And, I think that's important. While I think the fan base probably initially read this report from ESPN and then took a dive into your story, and there's a lot of freaking out going on, like, how can you bring me back? They're going to be 1-11 or 2-10 or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. So that's important to remember. There's still games to be played, and there's still an opportunity to, he can state his case in these next 5 games why he should be back. But there are other questions that go beyond that, in my opinion, about bringing him back and giving more NIL money. I mean, you have revenue sharing next year starting. I understand you can still get NIL. I mean, I get that, but there's a pot of money there coming that should work in Purdue's favor. I get, but what's the success record in the portal so far? Are you just throwing more money at a bad situation, or will this money actually help? I mean, he got an influx at NIL at the end of last year, and he was able to keep, Jenkins and, whoever else, and also bring in players. But all that has not worked out right now. So, I mean, there's a lot there. I would just tell people to take a step back. There's more games to be played. Situation, it doesn't sound like the situation, and you obviously know more because of the people that you talk to, that nothing is set in stone. And the fact that Purdue wants Ryan Walters to succeed is no surprise. Of course they do. They hired him. They want him to get the football program up and running. But I would also say Purdue's always going to be behind when it comes to NIL. This year, next year, the year after that, 5 years from now, they're always going to be behind, just the way the makeup of the fan base is and where their priorities are as far as funding things. So, I mean, you have to acknowledge that it's out there, and that's what we're doing today. And I hope that, things can go forward from here, but there's more examination that needs to be had.
Yeah, incomplete right now.
Right.
From what we've seen thus far in 2024, Mike, I think most would agree it's been an F.
Yes.
You got to win over an overmatched FCS team. You got 30 some odd minutes of good football in Champaign, Illinois, and I guess a scoreless half against Nebraska, if you want to throw that in there too. But again, it's just not losing, Mike. We all know that. We've talked about this. It's not just the losses. It's the manner in which they've lost. It's the manner in which they've looked losing. Often just overrun. They look unprepared. Poor tackling. Mistakes repeated from week to week with the penalties in particular. Pass interference calls, sort of on and on. It's gone. And I think that's really what's got people aggravated. I think it's fair to say it's no great observation that 66-7 loss to Notre Dame. It's going to be difficult to expunge that from your mind if you're a Purdue fan, and that's going to live with this staff. The worst loss in school history, an utter embarrassment. Eviscerated on your home field with 2 weeks to prepare against probably a pretty good Notre Dame team, not a great Notre Dame team. Again, it's hard to take. Plus, it was Notre Dame's first trip in town here since like 10 years. But anyway, I think, again, it's been the manner in which they've lost, which has really stung people. And there's been no progress from last year, Mike. 4-8 to maybe 1-11. And you mentioned the schedule remaining, and how many times we said Purdue faces a must-win game? I know I can sometimes overstate that, but boy, this Northwestern game, you got to
Yeah,
win. Got to
yeah,
win.
yeah. No, I think a lot goes into this game now
Yeah.
because this is a peer program.
Mhm.
This is a team. This is a program that you should match up well against. Um, I don't know if I go must win, but it's one of those must. We can't see what we've seen the last 6 or 7 weeks type of game. I mean, if Northwestern comes in here and physically manhandles you, wins the game comfortably, then to me that's a telling sign. We don't need to play the next 4 weeks after that. I mean, it's so this game I think will show a lot, will tell a lot because again, you're coming off an off week. You've had a chance to figure out what you're going to do at the quarterback situation. We know Ryan Walters is still going to call the plays, but how much can be fixed in a week at this point of the season for this team? Yeah, they're going to get C.J. Smith back, but we haven't seen C.J. Smith on the field, so we don't know what he brings. There's still a lot of shortages on this team. I just don't think get turned around. Northwestern, as you know, is a traditionally physical team. They've owned the line of scrimmage against Purdue in several of the last handful of meetings. And how does Purdue hold up? And now that this report is out there, and then you're reporting on this, how does this team play for Ryan Walters, knowing that he's kind of coaching for his job in the month of November, and that will be a telling sign as well for me. And we've had a handful, maybe not a handful, we've had some white flag moments from this team in the first part of the season. Any more of that is damaging against Ryan Walters. I know Purdue doesn't want to pay people not to work. I know Purdue doesn't want to just hand out $9.3 million to somebody. And I get all that. It's a business decision, but money drives this thing. Always has, always will. And the other part of it too is, and you know this because I've asked you about it a couple times. A lot of these assistants, their contracts run out in 24. Mm-hmm. So are you re-upping those guys? Are you trying to bring in a new staff that are going to want more than 1-year contracts? How much of a financial investment are you going to make there? Can you upgrade your staff if Ryan Walters is coming back? Can you upgrade your staff knowing that he might be out after next year? And how many people want to hitch their wagon to that? So you're going to have to pay more if you're going to bring in new assistants. And we saw that at the end of Darrell Hazel's career, where you had journeymen, guys that have been around the college football coaching block several times. The Ross-Ade's of the world, Terry Malone's. And that's basically what you're going to have. And if he is coming back, is he going to be told or forced to hire some assistants with some experience, with greater experience than you have on this staff? So again, there's a lot of things left, I think, to see how it happens. But I think Saturday will, the Northwestern game, I think, will tell everybody more. I know a lot of people are just convinced and they don't want to hear it anymore, but I think this is another data point for them and I think it's the biggest data point of the season right now.
Tim Tibesar.
Yes. Yes, that's another name.
We got some deep cuts here on
from Danny Hope's era, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember when Danny Hope hired Don Landholm. But anyway, yeah, you're right. That's one of my concerns, Mike, is who you could attract to come work at Purdue in 2025, knowing the seat Walters is sitting on is extremely hot. I think we know it's going to be the out-of-work older coach, desperate for a job, or you're going to get another young guy who's going to drool at the opportunity to run a Big Ten offense or a defense. And for sure, if Walters is back, we know there's going to have to be an offensive coordinator hire. Who's that person going to be? What's the offense going to look like? Just to back up real quick, too. I don't think what ails this team can be fixed right now.
Correct.
It's like changing a tire on a moving car. I think the dysfunction runs so deep here, and I think there's talent deficiencies, probably scheme deficiencies that they aren't going to be able. You're not going to be able to correct until we get to December through whatever July. But again, offensive coordinator, and again, the staff changes won't end there, Mike. Without a doubt, I think you're going to see something happen on defense if Walters is back. You're going to have several new coaches over there, I would think, Mike. And is Ryan going to depart from his scheme that's identified him? That'll be interesting to see if he's back. I don't know if that scheme can be successful if you don't have the right personnel. But anyway, those are questions that cross my mind. And again, money. You mentioned money. How much of a decision to bring him back do you think is about money? I tend to think it's the driving force.
Well, I think it's a force. It's up there, 1A, 1B, 1C. And the money to me is not more about what you're going to owe Walters. The money for me is, what are you paying the next guy? Mm-hmm. What are you paying the next staff? Because you've already budgeted for the next 3 years. You were going to pay Walters this money. Mm-hmm. You know that's there. And now you have to invest in a staff now, 1 or 2 year contracts for these guys, either that are coming back or you're hiring somebody new. But it's the money, I think, comes into play when you're looking at who you're going to hire as the new head coach. How much are they going to want? How much is Purdue willing to go to get in the game in the new Big Ten? How much of a salary pool for the staff? And then over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen just gobs and gobs of support staff people added to programs, which increases your financial stuff as well. So there's a lot there, but money is there. Money is a driving force. And then on top of that, you have revenue sharing that you have to get going next year. So there's a lot of moving parts from a financial standpoint that have to be sorted out. How much is the university willing to help, if they're going to help in some of these areas? I think they are going to help in revenue sharing, but the other things, I mean, you're going to be asking a lot of your donor base to help fund this stuff. And you and I both know, and everybody knows, Purdue doesn't have a lot of those kind of donors that you would see in the SEC and maybe some other Big Ten schools. And that's that you keep going back to the same people. And there's I know a couple donors who just will not get involved in the NIL thing. It's not what they want to do. It's not how they want to funnel their resources to Purdue. They would rather do it other ways, and that's no secret either. So, yeah, financial is a big thing to me, and it's a big thing to them because they need to operate in a break-even fashion at worst, or at best, I guess. I don't know, however you want to phrase it. That they just can't be losing money in the athletic department and then become a bit of a drain on the university.
Yeah, we know Purdue's a quote-unquote basketball school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Mike, football is the engine that drives these athletic departments, even at so-called basketball schools. So we all know the importance. The people sitting along Northwestern Avenue know the importance of having a vibrant football program that's selling seats. And there's also obviously a benefit PR-wise too. But yeah, Mike, real quick too, I'm looking at I'll back up real quick too on hiring assistants too. If Ryan does return, we know staff changes are coming. I think you alluded to, will someone help Ryan?
Well, will he want the help?
Well, I'm not going to speak for him, but
right.
Sometimes that's where agents get involved. His agent's Trace Armstrong. I'm sure Trace was involved in putting together the first staff. There's nobody at Purdue that has the knowledge to help him build a staff. Babinski doesn't know football coaches. So that will be interesting to see. Ryan had his chance to build a staff. Maybe I would want some help. But anyway, that's neither here nor there at this point. Just a question that I thought about. I'm looking at his term sheet real quick, Mike, and he's due 4.1 million in year 3, 4.15, 4, and 4.2 in his 5th year. And this is interesting. His program salary pool, $5.5 million for 10 assistants and 1 head strength coach. You talked about the expense of a new staff. What do you think? If they do move on from Ryan, they could have to pay upwards of what? Maybe $5 or $6 million a year for your head coach. And how much would your assistant salary pool go up? And Mike, too, we haven't talked today, but we've talked before about the schedule next year. It's just brutal. And if they approached Mike Carmen and said, "Come be our head coach next year," you know that schedule, you know that problems are Purdue. Maybe you want an extra year put on your contract. You want a 6th year, and the assistant coaches want 3 years. So who knows? I'm just throwing stuff out there. Purdue's in no position to really bargain. You wouldn't think if they want the guy they want. I think he's going to be able to dictate terms. I'd be interested to see what you think maybe those terms could be, just ballpark wise. How much could Purdue end up paying the next head coach if they go that direction?
Well, again, a lot depends, who it is and their experience. And I mean, you're going to get you should be getting a head coach. If you're making a change, if you're going to make a change, you need to have a head coach with head coaching experience. You need to have, and my opinion is that the guy needs to come from an offensive background. I think is important. He needs to prove that he has rebuilt programs before it doesn't have to be at the highest level. We see plenty of examples across the country of mid-major teams, major coaches coming in and bringing FBS programs back to life. So it can happen, and with the portal today, it can happen quicker. So there's a lot on the criteria list or the check the box list of what you need from a head coach. What does that mean when you start talking salaries? And you look at the schedule and you look at future schedules as well. I mean, I think Purdue has to, if they're going to make a change, you got to be in the $5 to $6 million range for a head coach. Then you probably got to up your salary pool for assistants from where it is now to probably in the $5.5 to $6 million range. Now, I don't believe Walters is using his whole pool. Jeff Brom never used his whole pool of money. It was there in case you had that big time assistant coach hire that you wanted to make. But so yeah, you have to increase the resources that you're offering a new coach, and that's the new money that while you're paying off the old coach or the former coach, it's the new money where you have to find some help from resources standpoint, and then you're going to have to find, again, if you're going to make a change, you have to find somebody to help you out with a buyout, because all these coaches have long-term deals that those schools are going to want. But again, if they do move on, it's about, and the person can be an offensive or defensive minded coach, but it's also about finding the right person. Yeah. And that's super important now for this program. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. And I'll state it again. I think the Northwestern game probably will dictate what direction this goes.
That's what we do, Mike. We get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, very much so.
Much to my dismay at times, but yeah, again, real quick, back to the NIL situation. Maybe donors don't want to, or hesitant to give. And I mean, if you're a donor who gave last year for NIL for Purdue football, would you want Ryan spending more of your money? Let's be frank. This class of transfer portal guys was lauded and touted by the recruiting sites and whatnot, and it hasn't been that good. I think we can all agree it's been a disappointment.
Correct.
Outside of maybe 4 or 5 guys out of a group of 19 dudes, a couple walk-ons in there too. I think Breedlove's been good. Reggie Love's been good. Your punter, your long snapper. 2 offensive linemen have been solid. They've started every game, but a lot of money's been spent, and I don't think they've got a lot of production from those guys. Would you want to keep writing checks to the person who spends it? I don't know. I do know Ryan spent a lot of time last year raising money, flying around. He kind of enjoys that. Pressing the flesh, pitching his program. So if he's back, he's going to have some more sales to do, I think. And I know he said they very much augmented their NIL pool from his initial year to this last year, or this current year. So again, maybe there'll be challenges there. Why should I give you more money again? Tell me again. What's your record? I mean, I'm just thinking like a fan, and so again, that's just something else. And like I said, there's still 5 games to go, and as you said, Mike, this Northwestern game. Who would have thought? Who would have thought back in August this be a game we'd have circled in red? I think they're supposed to have a good crowd. It's a noon kickoff on BTN. So yeah, it's a big one, Mike Harmon. And yeah, you have any other closing thoughts here to leave people with?
Well, the one thing I will say about NIL is it hasn't the transfer portal under Walters hasn't really worked. Okay, that's a fair. I think that's a fair statement. But if you're just going to go get more money and have the same guy making the same decisions, is that really the smart thing to do? And I understand all coaches have challenges in the portal because it's speed dating at its fastest, and you're just trying to piece things together. I mean, yeah, they brought 4 guys in from Georgia, but if Georgia really wanted those guys, they would have kept them. So you have to go get players that want to be here. You got to go get players that have something to prove, that want to play, whether it's 1 year or 2 years they have left. So there's a lot goes into it. One thing I don't want to see Purdue do is just throw more money after a bad situation. And I think it might be headed that way, whether it's bringing the coach back, whether it's just throwing more money at NIL. I mean, in any business, they'll tell you just don't throw more money after a bad situation. And unfortunately, in college athletics, that's kind of what it's become, where you just, I need more NIL money. I need more NIL money. Well, do the results equal the NIL money that you're getting? And rate of return is something that all CEOs, ADs, people in high-powered positions look at. What's your rate of return on this? And the other thing we haven't talked about, I've mentioned, and I don't know how big of a factor it will be, but if you bring Ryan Walters back, what does that do to your season ticket sales going into next year? How much is that a big deal? Is that offset by maybe some of the opponents that you bring in that would help bring more people to Ross-Ade Stadium? Fans are notorious for saying, well, if you bring that guy back, I'm not buying tickets. Well, today you say that, but 6 months from now, you might be sitting in the stands. So, but I think that's a component that Purdue needs to look at. And as we've talked about before, I mean, so much goes into football game day for the other sports, for the university, that you need a vibrant football program to make everything kind of work and bring everything together and allow the other sports to excel as well, and your university to excel. So there's so much that goes into it other than the 3.5 hours that happens on Saturday. But I mean, there's a lot of things that this administration, Mike Bobinski, Tiffany Grimes, even the board of trustees and the president are going to have to really cipher through, I think, in the next month to figure out what direction they want to go.
Yeah. And also, if you bring Ryan back, how does that impact your high school recruiting? Everybody knows the situation in West Lafayette. How does that impact your portal recruiting? Maybe your portal recruiting isn't impacted because these guys are kind of looked at as mercenaries usually. If they get paid and they're going to play, hey man, I'm in. They all want to play, and of course they want their money. So a couple other things that you'd have to consider if Ryan is brought back, how those issues would be impacted too. So yeah, again, real quick too on the schedule, just a quick reminder. I alluded to it earlier. 2025 at Notre Dame, at Michigan, Ohio State, USC at home, at Washington. Those are the highlights. I guess you can look at them as highlights. A lot of heavy lifting. I think you've characterized it as the toughest schedule, one of the toughest, maybe the toughest you've ever seen. I know you think it's tough last year. So whoever's coaching this team has got the whistle around their neck. Has got to stare that down next year. So gonna be filled with challenges. So yeah, And again, lastly, just on the portal too. You mentioned guys who want something to prove themselves, and I'm always kind of like getting those guys coming from the MAC or from smaller schools. Sometimes they do have something they want to prove. They're not coming down from the SEC or some other glory league thinking that, hey man, you know where I play, you know where I'm from. Maybe I'm painting everybody with the same broad stroke, but I bet there's some of that too. It's Purdue. I'm going to take care of business here.
And I'll say this, and if Walters is comfortable knowing that he's going to come back, that work should be underway right now.
Yeah,
you should be identifying guys at whatever level, and like you said, you need to go find MAC players, players that everywhere that want to prove something, that want to come here, get on a big stage, play on CBS, play on NBC, play on Fox. Improve themselves. I mean, the Carson Steele, good example. Ball State to UCLA to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Purdue needs more of those type of guys instead of guys that bring an SEC tag to them. And but that work should be underway. You should be looking at that. And the other part of all this too is how many players on the current roster will get the portal as this month of November unfolds. And I mean, there's just a lot of things to watch, a lot of signs, and it's we didn't think November would be this big of a month, but it's shaping up to be one as far as kind of the direction of the program and what the future may hold.
Thought it'd be big because basketball was starting, right?
Yes, basketball starts. They play their charity game against Creighton, and then exhibition game next week, and then off and running. I mean, they've got a really challenging non-conference schedule when you look at it. Alabama and Marquette, NC State, program they played in the Final Four last year. You still got Texas A&M, you got Auburn, and then you can start talking about the Big Ten at that point as they go through it. But I think this team. They haven't lost a non-conference game in 3 years, I think. They blew through Hawaii, they blew through Connecticut, they blew through some other places. Portland. They've taken care of business in the non-conference schedule. Don't know if that'll happen again, but I think this non-conference schedule really will help Purdue once it gets in the Big Ten, and I expect them to be in the top three by the time we get to late February, early March.
Lastly, just on football, I don't think we're going to get a vote of confidence from Bobinski for this staff right now. And I do wonder, Mike, though, and we can end on this. I was thinking, maybe I was brainstorming this with you, or I was talking to somebody last night. Whatever you're going to do if you're Bobinski, bring him back or make a change. To me, it makes a lot of sense to do that going into the IU week.
Correct. We had talked about that on another program.
Okay. It's all running together for me.
That won't air. It wasn't last night because I was eating a pork chop on a stick in Tipton, so it wasn't last night. But yeah, I think whatever clarity they're going to have, and I think we'll get some clarity out of the game on Saturday to have a sign. But whatever you're going to do, I think going into that IU game, I think you need to tell people what direction you're going.
Yeah.
If not sooner. Maybe
sooner. I think Jim Coletto was told going into that Michigan game in '96. I can't remember how many. Maybe they had 2 games left going into that one. So who knows?
Well, no, he. I think the story goes that he had offered up his resignation after they got beat. I think by Wisconsin or somebody. But then after they beat Michigan, he kind of, hey, can I have my job back? And they're like, no.
That's a George Costanza move.
That was that thrilling 9-6, 9-3 Michigan win.
Yeah.
That they beat it at Ross-Ade Stadium.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the quicker they can provide some clarity, the better off everyone is. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, where did the Thamel story come from? Is it an agent-driven story? Is it somebody at Purdue leaking this? Where where's all this kind of coming from? And I don't know if Purdue, the higher ups, are in the business of leaking stuff like that. I don't. It doesn't seem to be their character, but you don't really know people until it's all over. Um, or did they see the report and are like, oh, what is this? This is not anything we've talked about, or this is in line with what we've talked about, type of thing. So it's a lot of, there's a lot of unknowns. But the quicker Purdue can provide some clarity on this as you get deeper into November, the better off, everybody's going to be.
Yeah. Fortunately, we have to discuss these subjects. I know there's a lot of interest. Obviously, I've got a lot of interest in it.
Right.
And people watching this do too, even though they're 1-6 and hoops is on our doorstep. So yeah, Mike, again, thank you very much, and we'd like to tip our hat going out to the Union Club Hotel again. Just a boffo place since that renovation a few years ago, the boiler up bar. I think Mike likes his martini shaken and not stirred, so I'll keep that on your memory if you're attending bar there. 811 Bistro, like I said, man. I can just look at the menu sometimes and just be impressed. And then, of course, the coffee shop, Leap's Coffee. Nice place. That's more my speed, Mike. You and I can have a little macchiato and wear our berets and talk about the crap in different past patterns. So thank you, Union Club Hotel. Thank you for everybody watching and listening. And you'll see our bright, happy faces about this time next week, a little bit later, though, after the Northwestern game. Will be very interesting to see what we're discussing then, Mike.
Yes, I think that's going to be a telling sign, or at least give us some indication of how this thing may end or continue.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.